Hello again, and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. It's Thursday the 20th of April. I'm Andrew Wilson, and this is Scotland at 7. This evening, I have the latest daily update from Ukraine on day 421 of the illegal Russian war of aggression and imperial ambition, and then I will take a look at today's headlines from Scotland and around the world. Ukraine's future lies in NATO, the Western Military Alliance's chief Jens Stoltenberg said today during his first visit to Ukraine since Russia's invasion 14 months ago. He pledged continued military support for Ukraine, saying that, so far, NATO allies had trained tens of thousands of Ukrainian troops and provided €65 billion of military aid alone. President Zelensky said NATO needs to invite Ukraine to become a member and give it a time frame for accession. Denmark, together with the Netherlands, will donate 14 Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. Izmini Pala, spokesperson for the UN office at the Joint Coordination Centre in Istanbul, is reported to have said that the inspections of vessels under the grain deal resumed on the 19th of April and are scheduled for the 20th of April. The Russia-occupied Zaporizhia nuclear power plant in southern Ukraine will stop using US-produced nuclear fuel as quickly as possible, a Russian official is reported to have said. The Admiral of Russia's Pacific Fleet, Admiral Sergei Avakyansk, fleet has left his position following combat readiness inspection exercises by the Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu. Russia's Federal Security Service, the FSB, seems to be conducting a large-scale overhaul of domestic security organs related to leaks of data to Ukraine, the Institute for the Study of War has reported in its update today. Switzerland will add the private military Wagner Group and the news agency RIA to its list of Russian-sanctioned entities. Ukraine has received a Patriot air defence system and a second German Iris-T air defence system ahead of the Ramstein military group meeting today, where it will be asking for more supplies. The United States announced $325 million in new military aid for Ukraine, including additional ammunition for high-mobility artillery rocket systems, HIMARS, advanced missiles and anti-tank mines. The European Commission is proposing €100 million in compensation for EU farmers who are affected by the recent influx of Ukrainian grain, as well as restrictions on selling wheat and maize in affected countries. That's in a move to calm tensions with Central and Eastern Europe. The US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said on Wednesday during a visit to Sweden that the US looks forward to welcoming Sweden as a NATO member before the alliance's summit in July. And a joint investigation by public broadcasters of several Nordic countries alleged that Russia has established a program using spy ships disguised as fishing vessels aimed at giving it the capability to attack wind farms and communications cables in the North Sea. Writing in the Telegraph, Conservative peer Lord David Frost has said that no more powers must be devolved to Scotland, and he added that it is time to reverse the process of devolution. He said that UK government ministers should make clear that, if re-elected, they will review and roll back some of the currently devolved powers. He emphasised, in particular, Scotland does not need to be an independent actor on the world stage. It should not be able to legislate to disrupt free trade within the UK, and it does not need to have most of the tax-raising powers currently available to it. The Tory former chief Brexit negotiator and ex-Cabinet Office minister praised Tory Scottish Secretary Alistair Jack for using his Section 35 order to clamp down on devolved powers, and said the Tory government must be more assertive in its attacks on devolution, arguing the UK Internal Market Act has not been used assertively as it should. Commenting, the SNP Westminster leader Stephen Flynn MP said, "The Tory mask has slipped. It's clear Westminster's repeated attacks on Scotland are a deliberate, coordinated attempt to reverse devolution, roll back the powers of the Scottish Parliament and force Scotland under Westminster control." With the pro-Brexit Labour Party working with the Tories to block devolution and deny Scotland's democratic right to choose our own future, independence is the only way to keep Scotland safe. There have been renewed calls for the UK government to scrap the benefits cap, as the UK government's own assessments showed that after the introduction of the cap, claimants spent less money on children and essential items. The research, commissioned by the Department for Work and Pensions, the DWP, and peer-reviewed by IFS researchers, suggested common impacts of the cap, including reduced spending, falling into debt, and borrowing from friends and family. Commenting, the SNP's social justice spokesperson, David Linden MP, said, "These assessments show the Tories and the DWP are well aware of the adverse impact of this cruel policy, and yet have continued to force it on households anyway, further entrenching poverty during a brutal Tory-made cost of living crisis. That is undeniably cruel and quashes any suggestion that the cap exists to act as some sort of incentive, as opposed to what it really is, a form of punishment for the poorest in society." In the Scottish Parliament today, Barry McCallan MSP, the Net Zero and Just Transition Secretary, led a debate on delivering on climate change and the just transition. Here's a short video of Barry McCallan opening the debate earlier today.
Secretary, around 12 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I am delighted to open this debate in my new role as Cabinet Secretary for Net Zero and Just Transition. These matters coming together side by side at Cabinet level for the first time, I believe, is instructive. For me, Net Zero is about acknowledging that unavoidable truth that we face a global climate and nature emergency, and that we have to be prepared to take action commensurate with the scale of that challenge. But putting this side by side with just transition at the top of government makes clear the commitment of this government to taking action and to doing so in a way that is carefully managed, that is fair, which learns the mistakes of the past and which leaves no one and no community behind. Let me be clear, Presiding Officer, this SNP-led government will never allow to happen to Scotland's oil and gas workers that which was done to our steel and our coal mining communities under Thatcher, where unplanned shifts left families and communities devastated. The First Minister and I visited Aberdeen earlier this month, and we saw some of what this government's £500 million Just Transition Fund is supporting. Our commitment to the North East is, of course, in stark contrast to the UK government, who repeatedly refuse, as recently as last week, to match our investment, and that despite the hundreds of billions of pounds that have flown from the North Sea to UK Treasury since the 70s. And all the while they continue to refuse to match our investment in the Scottish cluster.
It has also been reported today that Scotland is rising through the rankings in green finance, according to the most recent edition of the Global Green Finance Index. The index, which measures the quality and depth of green finance, now places Edinburgh in the top 15 green financial centres in the world. Meanwhile, Glasgow has moved from 53rd to 46th. Scotland now boasts 2 cities in the Green Index, while England only has 1 financial centre accounted for. Thanks to the increased investment from the Scottish Government, these rankings prove that Scotland is well on its way to establishing itself as a major centre for green and ethical finance as we move towards net zero. The publication of the Dominic Raab bullying report has been delayed by Rishi Sunak. The Prime Minister's spokesperson said Mr Sunak was still considering the report and wanted to publish it swiftly, but would not say when. If Adam Tolley KC, who investigated the bullying allegations and wrote the report, has produced something nuanced and inconclusive, then he will have left the final judgment about what to do with Raab much more in the hands of Sunak. On the other hand, if Raab had been categorically acquitted of any misconduct, we would probably have heard about it by now. Given the weight of evidence against him, that seems to be the least likely outcome, and it may be that the Prime Minister is holding off publication until he has worked out how to handle the fallout of the report finding Dominic Raab guilty. According to the terms of reference, Adam Tolley KC was asked not to form a judgment as to whether those facts show that RAB did bully officials. The terms of reference are explicit about that being Rishi Sunak's job. They say, as set out in the Ministerial Code, the Prime Minister is the ultimate judge of the standards of behaviour expected of a minister and the appropriate consequences of a breach of those standards. Number 10 has said it is not going to announce a decision about Dominic Raab's future today. UK ministers have been warned by a former head of the English judiciary that plans to let the UK ignore rulings from the European Court of Human Rights, the ECHR, on small boat crossings could be defeated in the House of Lords. John Thomas, who was the Lord Chief Justice of England and Wales from 2013 to 2017, said that the move would probably amount to a symbolic breach of the rule of law. He criticised the government for caving in to a group of hard-right Tory MPs who had threatened to launch a rebellion during the final parliamentary stages of the illegal migration bill. About 30 backbench rebels have been pushing Rishi Sunak to harden the legislation so ministers can ignore interim rulings. One of the Strasbourg Court's Rule 39 injunctions blocked the government's first attempt to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda last year. These interim measures are typically used to suspend an expulsion or extradition, often in the case of asylum seekers who fear persecution if they are returned to their home country. Lord Thomas expressed concern that the government would table amendments to the illegal migration bill in advance of the crunch vote next week. MPs will consider the remaining stages of the illegal migration bill in the Commons on Wednesday the 26th of April, according to the House of Commons leader, Penny Mordaunt. The Chamber will discuss and vote on proposed amendments to the bill before it is sent to the House of Lords for further scrutiny. Removing the UK altogether from the ECHR, the rights of which were incorporated into UK law in 1998 with the Human Rights Act, is viewed as problematic, as the court is an integral part of the Good Friday Agreement that brought peace to Northern Ireland. The Circular Economy Minister, Lorna Slater, has announced a range of measures to make it easier for drinks producers and retailers to prepare for the deposit return scheme, while making sure environmental benefits are still delivered, and she has repeated the call on the UK government to issue an exclusion for the scheme from the Internal Market Act. Craft drinks producers and pubs that provide off-sales are among those who will benefit from changes to Scotland's deposit return scheme. The changes announced are drinks containers of under 100 millilitres will be excluded. That removes miniatures and other small containers from the scheme. Products that sell fewer than 5,000 units per year will also be excluded, which will particularly benefit craft producers. All hospitality premises that sell the majority of their drinks products for consumption on the premises will be exempt from acting as a return point, and the online application process for retailers to apply for an exemption from providing a return point has been simplified. Circular Economy Minister Lorna Slater said, Scotland's deposit return scheme will reduce litter on our streets, massively increase the recycling of drinks containers, and help meet our net zero ambitions. However, to realise these benefits, DRS needs to be delivered in a way that works for businesses, especially for small drinks producers. The changes I have set out will make the scheme easier for industry to deliver, especially for craft producers, while still making sure the vast majority of drinks containers are captured for recycling. Changes to Scotland's deposit return scheme are subject to the approval of the Scottish Parliament. Suella Braverman has been condemned by a group of MEPs over the arrest in London of a French publisher who was interrogated by counter-terrorist police about his political views and anti-government contacts. 12 MPs have written to the Home Secretary to express their outrage at the scandalous treatment of Ernest Moret, who was detained for almost 24 hours and whose iPhone and laptop remain in the hands of the British police. The European politicians accuse the British government of infringing basic human rights and abusing anti-terrorism law. The French government is also being urged by French MPs to explain its role in Moret's London arrest. Moret, who's 28, is a rights manager at the radical publisher Éditions La Fabrique, had travelled to London for a book fair. He was quizzed by police about participation in recent protests in France and asked if he supported Emmanuel Macron, in what his lawyer, Richard Parry, condemned as an abuse of power. In their letter to Braverman, the MEPs, which includes politicians from France, Spain, Germany, Portugal and Ireland, accused the British government of complicity in the French government's crackdown on protest. The letter said the police officers claimed that Moret had participated in demonstrations in France as a justification for this act, a quite remarkably inappropriate statement for a British police officer to make, and which seems to clearly indicate complicity between French and British authorities on this matter. The letter added, "We consider these actions to be outrageous and unjustifiable infringements of basic principles of freedom of expression and an example of the abuse of anti-terrorism." It is understood that there is no evidence to suggest that Moret posed any risk to the UK. He had more than 30 appointments arranged at the London Book Fair, but returned to Paris on Wednesday, 2 days earlier than he planned. He has been ordered to report back to counter-terrorist police in London next month. Book bans in US public schools increased by 28% in the first half of the 2022-23 academic year, the writers' organisation PEN America said today, describing a relentless conservative crusade to constrict children's freedom to read. Releasing a new report, Banned in the USA, State Laws Supercharge Book Suppression in Schools, PEN America said the increase was over figures for the previous 6 months. Censorious legislation in states across the country has been a driving force behind new restrictions on access to books in public schools, it said. Since PEN America started tracking public school book bans in July 2021, it has recorded more than 4,000 instances of banned books, including 1,477 individual book bans affecting 874 unique titles during the first half of the current school year. Book bans are more common in Republican-run states. According to PEN America, 7 districts in Texas were responsible for 438 instances of individual book bans, and 13 districts in Florida were responsible for 357 bans. The report said that 1,477 books banned this year, 38% are about race, racism, or include characters of colour, while 26% have LGBTQ+ characters or themes. According to PEN America, the most frequently banned books in the 2022-23 US school year were Gender Queer, a memoir by Maya Kubabe, Flamer by Mike Curato, Tricks by Ellen Hopkins, and The Handmaid's Tale, a graphic novel by Margaret Atwood and René No. Atwood last year supported PEN America by auctioning an unburnable edition of her dystopian feminist novel, which was first published in 1985 and became the inspiration for the hit TV series. The auction raised $130,000. Book bans have not been without political consequences. In Florida, the so-called Don't Say Gay laws have been expanded from public elementary schools to the whole state system. However, Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis lost backing for his presidential run as a major donor. Thomas Petterfy withdrew his support, saying that book bans were a concern for him. Around 200 million single-use cups are used and discarded in Scotland every year. Only 4% of these are recycled. At the Eden Court Theatre in Inverness today, an innovative new reusable cup scheme, Cup Movement in the Highlands, was launched by environmental charity Keep Scotland Beautiful. A recent survey highlighted that 81% of people in the Highlands thought takeaway venues needed to do more to make it easier for people to buy and use reusable cups if they wanted to, while 90% were concerned about the environmental impact of single-use cups being littered. In response, the pilot reusable cup scheme has been developed in partnership with local businesses that sell takeaway drinks in the area around the NC500 route. The scheme uses innovative app technology from cup systems supplier Vital. Now, 25 businesses have signed up to trial the scheme, running until autumn 2023, with the aim to make it easy for people to make the switch from single-use cups to reusable ones for their takeaway drinks. The Vital app can be downloaded from any app store, and a map of the participating businesses near the NC 500 route can be found at keepscotlandbeautiful.org/Highland Cup Movement. And the full tour for the National Theatre of Scotland's new production Dear Billy has been announced. The show is a love letter to Billy Connolly from the people of Scotland. Dear Billy will be touring to theatres across Scotland between the 16th of May to the 24th of June, including the Palace Theatre in Kilmarnock, the Traverse Theatre in Edinburgh, the Ayr Gaiety, the Dundee Rep, East Kilbride's Arts Centre, Heart of Hawick, Theatre Royal Dumfries, the Lith Arts Centre, the Strathbeffer Pavilion, Nairn Community and Arts Centre, the Byre Theatre in St Andrews, Lantern House in Cumbernauld, Dunoon Borough Hall, the Perth Theatre, and the King's Theatre in Glasgow. From the shipyards of the Clydeside to his trailblazing and extraordinary stage and movie exploits, Billy Connolly is woven into Scottish culture. Everyone has a Billy story, and an expert team of story gatherers has created a collection of these moving and hilarious tales. Gary McNair, one of Scotland's best theatre makers, has turned these stories into a special show, celebrating the Big Yin and what he means to all of us. Dear Billy is a touring production that will evolve on the road. It will travel the length and breadth of Scotland, visiting local theatres, arts and community centres, building up to a final run at the King's Theatre in Glasgow. The production was announced last year to mark Billy Connolly's 80th birthday year. Gary is hitting the road with musicians, collecting more stories from audience members which may become woven into the show as the tour progresses. Each show offers a unique chance to audiences to laugh, sing and celebrate the man and the legend. Dear Billy is written and performed by Gary McNair, whose work has been celebrated on the international stage, and is directed by Joe Douglas. Musicians joining Gary on the road will be Simon Liddell and Jill O'Sullivan. Jackie Wiley, the artistic director of the National Theatre of Scotland, said, "Billy Connolly is arguably Scotland's most loved artist. We thought it fitting that his National Theatre should honour him with a theatrical love letter in the form of this special new show." And that's all that we have for you this evening. In making these programmes, Broadcasting Scotland relies on the support of viewers and others who value our distinctive approach to news, current affairs and culture. Please help us to continue to make these programmes, to continue to develop the station, and to make new programmes for you. Our programmes will always be free to view, but if you can afford £5 per month, please consider becoming a Broadcasting Scotland supporter. We have set ourselves a target of raising £30,000 in order that we can continue to pay the bills. To everyone who has donated, and to everyone who has signed up to make a regular monthly payment as a Broadcasting Scotland supporter, thank you very much. There are other ways in which you can contribute to our work. If you would like to volunteer to work with Broadcasting Scotland, either behind the scenes or in front of the cameras, or in any other way that helps our work and promotes the station, then please visit our website at www.broadcastingscotland.scot. Please you can find us on Twitter at BroadcastScot. Please like and retweet us there. And you will also find us on Facebook by searching for Broadcasting Scotland. When you're watching us on YouTube, it would be great if you would like and subscribe to Broadcasting Scotland on that platform. We will be back tomorrow evening at 7 for the next edition of Scotland at 7, so please come back and join us then. I'd like to thank everyone who's watching this evening. I hope that you have a very peaceful evening. Bye-bye.